Chael Sonnen's not sure Justin Gaethje's a tougher fight for Khabib Nurmagmedov than Tony Ferguson. As Khabib Nurmagmedov gets set to fight Tony Ferguson at UFC 249 on April 18th, some observers have argued that Justin Gaethje is actually a tougher fight for the champ than El Cucuy. Well, recently Chael Sonnen reported he's not sure he's on board with that theory. Ferguson has been booked to fight Khabib yet again as a result of a 12-fight winning streak that includes winning the interim lightweight title and defeating many top-tier fighters along the way. While most people understand Ferguson is one of the greatest lightweights on the planet, some people have argued that Gaethje would be a tougher challenge for Khabib. A key reason being, according to the theory, is that Gaethje is a former NCAA Division I wrestler. While Ferguson also has a lot of wrestling experience, he's been out-wrestled and out-grappled in the past, and that was against fighters who don't have the wrestling pedigree of Khabib. Case in point, not long ago, Dustin Poirier said the following on Ariel Helwani's MMA show while discussing Khabib versus Ferguson.
It's MMA. Anything could happen. Nothing's for sure. But I just think he's going to be the better competitor. I think if Kevin Lee was able to out-wrestle Tony, and I think Danny Castillo did the same thing, Khabib's definitely going to be able to do it.
Do you see anyone at 155 right now who hasn't fought Khabib, who can give him a tough fight?
Off the top of my head right now, I think Justin Gaethje. I think he might have the ability to keep his back off the fence and keep it in the middle. And if he does get taken down, scramble back up. I think guys like that who are going to take risks and brawl and have the hips and the wrestling knowledge to stay up would give him problems.
Well, recently, Sonnen weighed in on this narrative on his YouTube channel. Here's what the retired fighter and decorated wrestler in his own right had to say.
I don't know that I believe that Gaethje, while I do believe is a top contender, I do not know that I fully believe that Gaethje can give Khabib a harder fight than Tony's about to give him. But the mere fact that we're discussing it is a compliment to Justin, for sure. Tony, former champion. Whether he's interim champion or not, he's former champion. Khabib, current champion. So the fact that we're now discussing Gaethje, I think that it's very compelling. I think that it's very relevant. I maintain any question you have at 155, any question, the right answer is Justin Gaethje.
So this is kind of interesting to hear, considering Sonnen's wrestling background. But as stated earlier, Ferguson also has a wrestling background, and he also has a nasty guard and an arsenal of chokes, which some believe will be a serious threat to Khabib's top game. But what do you think? Is Gaethje a stiffer test for Nurmagomedov than Ferguson? Or is El Cucuy the biggest threat to Khabib's reign right now? So what if Yoel Romero beats Israel Adesanya? Manager says he'll grant Star a rematch. Yoel Romero is challenging for the middleweight title this Saturday at UFC 248, in large part because Israel Adesanya went out of his way to secure the bout. So what if Romero beats the last stylebender? Well, according to his manager, the middleweights will likely run it back. Following UFC 243, which saw Adesanya take out Robert Whittaker to unify the 185 titles, all signs were pointing to the champ fighting Paulo Costa next. After all, Costa outscored Romero for a decision win last summer. He's also undefeated, like Adesanya, and the two have been trading verbal shots for months. But after news surfaced that Costa had injured his bicep and was going to be sidelined for a while, Adesanya started calling for a fight with Romero. That caused a bit of a stir in the MMA world, since Romero was also defeated by Whittaker prior to his bout with Costa. The new champ, however, wants to silence any doubts that he can hang with a world-class wrestler. Further, while talking about why he wants to throw hands with the powerful Romero at a recent presser for the bout, Adesanya said this: "Romero is a guy that no one ever calls out, allegedly. Only ever, I think, David Branch called him out. But I want to test myself against everyone of this era who is a beast. And he is a beast, so I'm going to test him. What I hope to accomplish? I want to be the first man to stop him properly," Adesanya said. What's his name? Paulo rocked him, Tim Kennedy rocked him, but no one has ever stopped him since Strikeforce. I think Rafael Cavalcante, I want to be the first in the UFC to put him away. Back to Romero's manager. While interacting with a fan recently on Twitter, Romero's manager, Ibrahim Kawa, tweeted out the following while discussing what could be next for him if he takes the title. Probably rematch Izzy first in Australia or New Zealand. He gave Yoel his chance, so I think we would gladly return the favor than whomever. It won't matter after that. Hashtag and new. And really, this comment shouldn't come as a surprise. If it wasn't for Adesanya calling out Romero, he wouldn't be getting a title shot. In fact, after Adesanya started driving for a bout with Romero Romero, initially, it didn't look like the UFC was on board. The question is, however, will the UFC give Adesanya an immediate rematch if Romero takes him out in decisive fashion? In what is Adesanya's first attempted title defense? Maybe not, right? In fact, if that happens, you could make a solid argument that Costa should face Romero next, since he's already defeated the Olympian. What do you guys think? Chuck Liddell is likely retired from fighting, but he's still down to perform in the WWE ring. Following his disastrous return to the cage in 2018, it sounds like Chuck Liddell has hung up the MMA gloves unless he's asked to wear them in a pro wrestling match. The former UFC champ and legendary fighter came out of retirement in late 2018 for a third fight with his longtime rival, Tito Ortiz. Unlike the first two bouts, which saw Liddell score stoppage wins, he was quickly bombed out by his fellow star. Well, since then, we haven't heard much about the 50-year-old fighting again. Recently, TMZ Sports caught up with the UFC Hall of Famer, and when asked about retirement, Liddell said this.
Are you officially retired, or are you ever considering a return to the ring?
I'm officially retired right now.
You are?
For now.
For now, which doesn't mean much these days.
The for now part is kind of disturbing, right? There's no question that Liddell is one of the greatest fighters ever, but he hasn't won a fight since 2007, and he was KO'd in his last 4 fights. So hopefully the Iceman is indeed done fighting. But what is clear is that if the WWE came calling, Liddell would be interested in performing for the pro wrestling promotion. When asked about that possibility, Liddell said this.
Would you consider getting into wrestling, WWE, doing anything like that?
Oh, of course, yeah. I'd still do WWE, still do pro wrestling. That'd be a lot of fun. Actually, awesome. I like that.
That would be awesome. You'd be great.
And when asked about who he might wrestle under the WWE banner, Liddell said this.
Who would be your dream matchup in WWE?
Oh man, I don't know. Gotta love doing something. Well, I don't know. I don't think The Rock's still in there, but I've never really followed WWE a lot. But
yeah, The Rock returns sometimes. He's still,
he's always fun to do something with. But
yeah. So you can see yourself flying off the ropes.
I'd like to have fun. I'm impressed by the stuff that those guys do. They do some crazy stuff off the ropes. So.
It'll be interesting to see if the WWE comes calling. Ronda Rousey made the move to WWE a little while back, and more recently, Cain Velasquez also signed with the company last year. That decision turned a lot of heads in MMA, since there was always talk about Velasquez possibly making another run at the UFC's heavyweight title if he could stay injury-free. But after his deal with WWE was announced, Velasquez said the following. A year ago, when I went to my first WWE show, I fell back in love with a sport that I had watched and participated in since I was a child. From that moment, I've been doing a crash course on all things that relate to pro wrestling. I've been training at different gyms, going to shows, and watching more matches than I would like to admit, but I can honestly say I eat, sleep, and breathe wrestling now. The contract is signed, and I'm on my way to my next goal, which is Universal Champion. It's also worth noting that UFC light heavyweight champ Jon Jones has also said he'd be interested in doing some pro wrestling. Although in his case, it likely wouldn't be a full-time transition. Earlier this year, Bones said the following when asked about doing some work for WWE. I think it's inevitable, said Jones. I've always respected WWE, and I feel like the sports can be so similar. What do you guys think? Would you like to see Liddell make the move to pro wrestling? Next, we have Nate Diaz sending a message to Conor McGregor. If you recall, Conor McGregor talked about fighting 3 times in 2020. It's already March and no Conor McGregor fight has been confirmed, while Nate Diaz went on Twitter to send shots. Nate Diaz tweeted out, "What happened to your season? I was already back in by now, WTF." What do you guys think? Do you want to see Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 3? The question is, however, is the UFC willing to risk McGregor's title shot at 155 by having him fight Diaz, a guy who is coming off a loss? Sure, a third bout would very likely take place at welterweight, but if McGregor was to lose that, interest in him having fight for the lightweight title would definitely take a hit. In fact, if that happened, and if Khabib defeats Ferguson at UFC 249, you know the champ would refuse to fight McGregor again. He's already said that Conor doesn't deserve a rematch yet, even going as far to denying $100 million to fight McGregor. But let us know what you guys think. Is McGregor going to target a third fight with Diaz next? And will the UFC be on board? Or, since McGregor is such a massive star, do they have no choice but to grant him his wish of fighting Khabib next?